Thorny, as we venture into the R&R, two truths are consistent. We love our dear Montana State, and we love great beer. And you know who else feels the same? Jeremiah Johnson Brewing. Brewed in the heart of Montana in downtown Great Falls, Jeremiah Johnson takes Montana's finest ingredients to craft some of Montana's favorite beers. And now, Jeremiah Johnson's second tap room is open in downtown Coeur d'Alene. Their Citra IPA is probably one of my favorites. But we all know, Thorny, you're not the hop lover I am. You're more of a mountain man Scotch ale.
Well, Foley, I'm certainly not a mountain man, but you are right. I do love their Mountain Man Scotch Ale. But come game day, you and I are both cracking their Golden Bobcat Pale Ale. So when you're looking for a quality craft beer brewed with Montana roots, a relaxing tap room, or just a six-pack to take to your favorite Bobcat tailgate, Jeremiah Johnson delivers. Make your next beer a Jeremiah Johnson, and as always, go Cats.
Welcome, everybody, to the R&R Catcast, a fan-based podcast focusing on Montana State athletics. We're two dudes named Ryan from the state of Washington talking about our dear Montana State. We hope you enjoy. All right. Welcome back, Bobcat fans. Thanks for joining us on what we're going to call the R&R After Dark. This is a quick hitting episode where Ryan and I, are going to talk about the game that just happened tonight or today. This is late where we're recording. And so we are just going to give you our quick hits, our thoughts on the game, our quick reactions. We're going to keep it short, about 20 minutes long, and just give it some quick, just brief kind of reactions to the game that was Montana State versus Northern Colorado. I almost forgot who we played there, Thorny. It's getting kind of late, buddy.
Getting pretty late. Yeah.
All right. Before we do that, let's just run down some early scores from the Big Sky right now. As going right now, at the time of recording, we still have Eastern Washington, Montana out there, and Idaho, UC Davis. So I'm not going to say anything about those games, but Montana State won 40-7 against Northern Colorado. I mean, this whole episode, we're going to talk about that. And then let's go down to Northern Arizona. Northern Arizona put a hurt on Idaho State 48-17. Northern Arizona rebounds after losing last week to Northern Colorado in overtime for a big win over the Bengals.
Yep, and then over in Cedar City, Portland State traveling on the road to take on the Thunderbirds. They're rebounding after their loss to Montana State, getting a nice 20-13 win in against the Thunderbirds. Yeah, so nice win for Bruce Barnum and company on the road.
All right, and then a get-right game for Weber State. They were victors over in Cal Poly, 38-7 down in San Luis Obispo. So that's just what's going on in the Big Sky right now. But we're here to talk about the Montana State game that was against Northern Colorado. Northern Colorado came into Bozeman today. It was a packed house. It was a lovely day. I mean, Montana State reported about 20,000 people in the stands. It looked just awesome to be there. The weather couldn't have been better. The fans showed out. It was a great game for Montana State. Like I said, we won 40-7. I wish I had a little bell every time I hit 40-7. I just want to hit ding. I mentioned this score. That's been a work upon for you and I.
All I have is a rim shot to play on my soundboard. Not quite the same.
We're not going to get into any kind of the statistic breakdown. If you want to listen to the statistics breakdown and more in-depth conversation, we're going to talk about that in our weekly episode. This is just going to be a shaped conversation around the good, the bad, and the ugly. But before we even get into that, I want to say the line was set at minus 21.5 for Montana State. We covered on that. Of course, it was 40-7, and then the over-under was 44. So we just eclipsed that. So those just some betting lines right there. But let's get right into it, Ryan. Let's get right into the good of this game. Why don't you start out?
I think the first thing I want to talk about, the good, our running game. Our running game got back on track and more of a, I think, what we expect to see, or what we've been accustomed to see the last few years from the Bobcat rushing attack. We had Isaiah Afonso and Elijah Elliott go over 100 yards. We got, what do we get? End up with 276 rushing yards for 6.6 yards per carry. So just good to see the offensive line paving some holes, clearing some holes, and the running backs bursting through the line. Like like I said, we've been accustomed to seeing some long touchdown runs. Just looked really strong against a supposedly pretty stout Northern Colorado defense that really didn't really stand much of a chance. But overall, super happy to see that get back on track.
Nice. I totally agree on that. One of the things that popped out to me in the first quarter, or the good was the first quarter. That was one of the best first quarters we've had all season. Maybe comparable to the one we had against either San Diego or Drake. Again, those get kind of confused in my mind, but we had 178 yards of offense in the first quarter compared to 20 yards of offense for the Bears. And we had 17 points as well. And so we were just romping on them, got out to a quick start. The running game was really opening up the passing game. We had a nice play action to Trayton Pickering there in the first quarter. So everything was clicking in the first quarter. And the Bobcats looked really good.
It's also good to see us more than double up an opponent's total yards. 552 yards, only 233 for the Bears. So I just like seeing that disparity. That just kind of is a real easy way to see how dominant the game actually was. So that's another good column. I guess that's, a point for the offense and a point for the defense in the good column there. Only 233 yards for the Bears total offense. Gotta love that. Defense was flying around today. They're playing energetic. Loved it.
Speaking of defense, we had 3 interceptions of Dylan McCaffrey. Zambrano had one. Callahan O'Reilly had one. And Tayakata had another. That was a contested one in the end zone. But McCaffrey had been taking care of the ball. So it was good to see Montana State have 3 interceptions. That was another thing that was really good for the Bobcats.
I'm going to piggyback off what you just, Tayokata's interception, because that's something I want to talk about too, is that the Cats were still fighting to keep Northern Colorado out of the end zone. The interception that Tayokata had was a 4th down interception, I believe, where it was a goal line stand. You don't have to be playing that hard at that point, but it's part of the culture, and I love seeing them still fight and compete. Like, you're not getting a touchdown. I don't care if there's only a few minutes left in the game or the third quarter. I don't know when that was, but the game was well over at that point. But, I just love the competitive spirit. Tayokata come down with the interception and keeping Northern Colorado out of the end zone.
Right on. 2 other things I want to mention about the good in this game. Blake Glessner went 4 for 4 for field goals.
Ooh.
And that's kind of a little bit of a double-edged sword. Why are we kicking so many field goals, right? So we'll get into that. And also, I want to give props to Danny Yu. He had 9 solo tackles this game. He really showed out. Troy Anderson was on the bench in the second half. I don't know what happened with him. Maybe he was nicked up. That's just total conjecture right there. So that is nothing I've heard or, putting out there.
Does seem odd,
but Danny Yu was spilling in for him. And so we didn't see Troy in the second half. Danny had a monster game. He had one of the best form tackles I've seen all season. And that guy just really balled out. Takata had 10 tackles, 2 tackles for a loss, and an interception. So he led the team in 10 tackles, but Danny Yu was right behind him with 9. All right, Thorny. Hey, why don't we move? Do you have any other goods before we move into the bads?
I'm just looking down here. I'll mention Matt McKay here in the good, just the steady Eddie. We're talking anywhere from like 225 to 275, kind of be his sweet spot there. It's another pretty solid game, 276 yards, 2 touchdowns, no interceptions. Got back in the right side of the turnover column, not throwing any bad balls or any interceptions. So, I'll put Matt McKay certainly in that good column there.
Yeah, he had a good game. He had his 2nd highest passing rating. And also Montana State, I wanted to just kind of just jump on that real quick. It had their largest offensive totals today with over 500 yards of total offense against the Northern Colorado Bears. Ironically, they had exactly 276 yards of passing and 276 yards of rushing, completely balanced right there. That's really good for the Bobcats. All right, let's move into the bad. And the good, the bad, and the ugly. I mean, the bad and the ugly, I always kind of struggle with this because they're kind of very similar.
Hairs, right?
Maybe, yeah, right. Maybe we should rename this the good, the not so good. I don't know. But anyways, one of the things that I want to talk about in the bad, maybe wasn't the ugly, was in the second quarter, we seemed to take our foot off the gas. We had all the momentum in the first quarter, And then in the second quarter, we got conservative. And the Bobcats looked pretty flat in the second quarter.
And that's both sides of the ball, too. Like, I think we had a series where we ran 3 times, including like a 3rd and 6 or 3rd and 7, and just like punted the ball right away. There's the touchdown drive from Northern Colorado. They just drove right down. That was probably the worst defensive series I've seen out of any Bobcat unit, first, second, third team in the entire season. I don't know what happened there. They just looked flat-footed and got caught on their heels and just did not look good. So it's becoming kind of a pattern a little bit that we have these flat series here and there, or we get the play calling on both sides of the ball, the soft defense, as you and I have kind of been harping on a little bit, and then the offensive play calling seems to get really conservative. Like we're gashing through the air, and then we'll just go run the ball 3 times and punt. Like it just don't quite fully get it. But that they're young coordinators, growing pains and all that stuff. But it's got to go in the bad column this week for sure.
Yeah, we seem to not put the pressure on the quarterback. We played this cover 2 zone that's each quarterback has been able to kind of just dial in the over the middle zone, and we really struggle when we go to that. So it's just something that's just kind of been a sticky point for you and I. Tom Stuber of Skyline Sports currently put it out a tweet today. He said 104 of UNC's 233 yards came in back-to-back drives in the second quarter alone. And I remember tweeting you or texting you right after the second quarter saying it was that our worst second quarter we've had all season. And it might have been. It was really a lackluster performance. I thought we could have just buried Northern Colorado after the first quarter and just had all of third quarter and fourth quarter to just to flex some starters out and get some backups in. But Montana State just kind of left them hanging around there for a little bit. And I just wish that Montana State had a little bit more of a killer instinct when blood is in the water, that we would just pounce on them and just put them away early.
I mean, we were one underthrown ball from McCaffrey away from being up just would have been 20-14, right? Right before halftime.
Yeah.
Like that was a pretty poorly thrown ball. There was nobody behind Zambrano. So it was kind of a thud to the second end of the second quarter, but the interception there, we turned it quite a ways down and scored a touchdown subsequently was a big key factor in that. But yeah, those spurts where they're just flat on both sides of the ball. We got to start figuring that out and get more of that killer instinct that you're talking about for sure.
All right. Another thing that I thought was kind of bad about the Montana State game was some botched plays. McCutcheon McKay looked a little bit confused, or maybe it was Afonso. I couldn't quite figure out who was messing that up, but fortunate enough, it's kind of a double-edged sword. We had these botched plays, but they turned out luckily pretty good for us. One was McCutcheon just bobbled the snap, and then again McCabe bobbled the snap, got it out to McCutcheon. McCutcheon made just a awesome move,
turn it into a 46-yard gain.
Yeah, exactly. So just really covered that one up, and then later on in the game, McKay just was handing it off to no one, and then just tried to scamper up the field, and he squeezed through a hole, and it looked good in the stats sheet, but a couple miscues early on, or maybe not just early on, just throughout the game on handoffs and just bobbled snaps, but nothing too big to be concerned about.
Not in this specific game, but yeah, it seems to be a trend here. We've had miscommunications several times now. That was the only interception that McKay has thrown all season, was against Portland State, where there was a miscommunication between him and Lance McCutcheon. I mean, and now there was 2 or 3 handoffs today that just were McKay was holding the ball out, and Afonso was like running the other way, and just looks like a statue out there just holding the ball, and you realize, no one's coming. So, we got to start working on that. This game is the 5th game now. I know it's new offensive coordinator, new scheme, and new quarterback and all that stuff, but we got to, start cleaning this stuff up if we're going to win some of these key crucial road games coming up.
All right. Another thing I thought that was in the last kind of bad thing we'll get into before we talk about the ugly, for me at least, is the Malott play. Malott is taking the Travis Johnson Wildcat kind of play. It was very predictable. We weren't doing anything else except running Tommy right up the middle. And, it was just like I said, it was just very predictable. I'd like to, we know Tommy Millard is a quarterback, and maybe they're just saving it. Maybe they're just putting it on tape right now to set it up later on in the season. But right now, as far as this game, it was just too predictable, and it just didn't net many yards.
Nah, I wouldn't put it in the bad category yet. You got like four carries for 20 yards. I don't think that's too terrible, including like a 10-yard scamper there. The last one was fourth down. That was definitely not good. But before that, I thought I was doing all right. Not willing to put it in the bad category yet over here, but also not in the good category. It's some sort of limbo.
Okay. Well, let's move into the ugly. There wasn't much ugly. I mean, this was a great win. This was a dominating win by Montana State. I was really happy coming out of this game, but in the game I was really frustrated, mainly because we didn't really capitalize on a lot of our drives. And the first thing I wanted to talk about in the ugly section is our third down play calling. We were 3 for 12 on third down. That's just not going to cut it. That was a drastic not cut, but a decrease from last week. And I just think our play calling is just really suspect on third down. We get into these third and longs, and we run the ball pretty often. And I'm wondering if Taylor Housewright is not trying to be the smartest man in the room.
I mean, he could be playing the field position battle. The game's well in hand half the time. I really don't know, but it's certainly concerning. 3 for 12 and 0 for 1 on fourth down, too, which is the Millard one we're talking about. So you're talking about third and fourth downs, 3 for 13. You're not going to win games against more similar opponents with those kind of numbers. So I don't know if it's the play calling, the execution. We've had some success on those 3rd and 7 rushing, like Isaiah Nfonse's touchdown was I believe that was like a third down run. So, but overall, yeah, I'd have to agree. That's definitely in the ugly category at the moment. Something that's got to be cleaned up.
All right, Ryan, do you have any uglies?
Penalties, man. Penalties.
Yeah.
I don't know what's going on with the penalties. They're personal fouls. And also the 3 holding calls on the punt coverage team. 3 calls. One was offset because Willie P got just crushed, like one of the cheapest crap hits you'll ever see. But we also got called for hold on it, so it didn't end up mattering. Poor Willie Patterson got just creamed for no reason. So there's those penalties, and there was the how many unsportsmanlike did we get this week? Was it 1 or 2? But that was another one. It was on Lewis Kidd, I believe, that basically ended up taking a touchdown off the board. It's frustrating to see. Most every single one I've seen on the replay so far this year are extremely questionable, but I know that across all levels of football, they're cracking down on taunting and that kind of stuff. So I just don't know if they have like less judgment on it. The one where Northern Colorado's player got like kind of thrown down and his helmet flew off and just kind of flopped around like a fish. It was so infuriating to see that actually work and get a call and end up taking points off the board. But you can't get yourself in a position like that. And it's obviously now 2 games in a row. You can't sit there and blame everyone else and the referees for everything when, there's a common denominator is you. So we got to figure out what's going on here and clean it up.
It's a good point. It's definitely in the last 2 games taken multiple touchdowns off the board for us. And that's, I just remember yelling at the screen. I'm just happy my wife and my kids were out doing like a little walk around on the Centennial Trail, because they would have been just, my wife would have come upstairs and chastised me for being too loud. But yeah, definitely infuriating to see those personal fouls, especially when we're in the red zone and they just take points off the board. And so that then goes back to what we talked about early on, padding Blake Glessner's 4 for 4 stats. So yeah, that's just infuriating. We got to get that taken care of. That's 2 weeks in a row that we've had problems, personal fouls. And I thought these personal fouls were just a little bit ticky-tacky. So
they were,
especially,
but they're going to end up costing us eventually in games that are closer.
Ryan, just a quick parting thought on the penalties real quick. Like, we haven't had many penalties against us. And specifically, I feel like the passing game, there's been some kind of questionable calls in my mind about like not calling pass interference against some of our receivers.
I feel like Lance McCutcheon
have you thought
mauled on every single play. Maybe it's just because
Exactly.
he does such a good job fighting through it and just catching the ball that the refs swallow the whistle. Like, well, he caught it anyway. But I don't know. There's definitely, I think I was looking at the stats before we started recording or just randomly this throughout the week. I think we are either last or second to last in penalties called against. So we're not getting many calls. It could be our style of play. I know Montana. I know Montana's right there and they're with us. So it could just be the style of play, but it's kind of frustrating.
All right. Well, the only thing else I have in the ugly, and it's really not ugly, at least I don't know, is what happened with Troy. And so if it was a serious thing, maybe, I mean, that's definitely going to be something very, very serious for us to talk about in the going forward. But I'm just, hoping Troy is doing well. He led the team still with tackles for a loss. He had 3 tackles for a loss. He had an amazing game. I watched the post presser. And Callahan O'Reilly said he probably had the best game he's had as a linebacker. I'm just a little bit concerned we didn't see Troy after halftime.
All right, man. I think we should call that a night here, huh?
Yeah, that was our first take on this R&R After Dark. Let us know if you like what you heard and get at us. Go ahead, Thorny, take us out.
I think it'll be a good alternative in case you don't necessarily like our big long things we do on Monday, or it's a little teaser if you do like those. And here's just a little teaser for basically going to break all this down and talk a lot more about everything on Monday. So thanks for listening. Pretty excited about the Cats win. You can find us on Twitter, RRCatcast. Find us on the web, rrcatcast.com. Gmail or email at gmail, rrcatcast@gmail.com. And Foley, let's get out here on a Saturday night after dark. Go Cats.
Go Cats.
Go Cats.